Hello everyone, and welcome back to another critique session. Now, tonight we'll be looking at my student Glenn's stuff that he's currently working on, and I just wanted to give you guys an insight into some of the back and forth that goes on with me and my students, and to kind of show how we outline some of our sessions, and of course how the project ultimately turned out. So, at the beginning, with most people that come to me looking for portfolio development, we set up a project outline at the very start, that roughly outlines 6 to 8 images, and it will look kind of something like this. We come up with a premise. I provide examples of different premises. We come up with inspiration. We set the art direction up first and foremost, so I can know on your end, what the student would like to achieve with art. What's the look? What is the feel? What is the style? And I try to help them go toward that specific goal. Again, I do not try to turn everybody into a carbon clone of me. I just provide advice and guidance. And so the image we'll be looking at tonight will be way down into, we're about the 4th week in, and it's this adventure kind of drama setting. Basically, some of the characters are on a sea vessel. Now, as we finally got to this week, we kind of looked over it and then ignored it until we got there. We thought, Glenn thought that, just having a boat in the middle of the water would be a little more boring. So we decided to backpedal a little bit, rediscuss some of the ideas. I think when we were meeting on week 3, and we're like, yeah, let's set up a scene. And we were doing some sketches, tossing out some ideas back and forth. And we're like, yeah, we could show a lot more drama, a lot more storytelling if we show some of like the crooked guys or the bad guys loading up this sea vessel. We're getting ready for this voyage to find Atlantis, with maybe some even like illegal packages or firearms, something like that. A little shady, so it would probably be done at night. But anyhow, the student got back to me probably midweek with 2 different versions of the idea. Essentially, kind of like a sunset version of the idea, as well as a nighttime version. Both are equally good, and both have, show different things, and both can have subtle kind of differences in what they want to show. And like I mentioned earlier, I think we end up going with the nighttime version on this one because it's the more challenging scene. There's a lot you could show kind of that they are more villainous because they're doing things kind of after hours at the dock. So we went, of course, narratively with that. But to get here, basically, I think when we were in the session on week 3, I don't have it anymore, but we were just doing really quick thumbnail sketches to plan layouts. Like, we're going to have a boat here, we're going to have trucks and guys loading up and dropping off shipments and stuff, maybe like a forklift over here. So we sent the student on along their way with a kind of a fairly solid idea of where they're going to head. And so, Glenn jumped right into SketchUp. I think grabbed a whole bunch of free, existing models, mocked up the whole scene, dropped in a boat, dropped in a chopper, a couple cranes, a loading truck, spaced it out, and then ultimately went with, this camera angle that we see here. So I recommended, we're a little far removed from the scene. When you do the final pass on it, lower the camera a little bit, get us like we're on the docks as a member of the crew. And that's ultimately what we got, which you'll see next. So I didn't hear from him for the remainder of the week, and then when we had our session on the weekend, this is what we got. And we had our first major feedback there. And that's kind of what I'm going to be largely talking about today, and I want to show the end results and how I feel it personally for me it was really successful for the students. So this is great. This is a great start. It's still he was starting to kind of hit that barrier where he didn't exactly know where to kind of push it beyond this. He's got a lot of things blocked out. It's very atmospheric. I love the tone and the mood, but it's also kind of missing a little bit of a spark of life. It's missing this activeness, I think, as I described it. There could be a lot more touch-up work in regards to the lights. But I think when I did my initial critique, what I was doing was just basically grabbing a lot of the foreground or some of these man-made structures, like back here, like this and the boat and stuff. I'd go along, I'd carefully trace it, and I think I initially said, let's create a greater amount of contrast between the elements on the dock and the sky, and that's something I basically showed with an overlay mode or whatever. So you just kind of coming in like that, and it definitely makes the edges pop from the darkness. Now, I love the idea of that city back there, but I think, you know, let's kind of scale things down and just focus on the docks at night. And we looked at a lot of great references. We looked at a lot of rainy scenes. Like, you know, let's just put other docks kind of lit back there, and we'll kind of have this kind of orange glow, this ambient light that'll kind of just kind of fill the thick, rainy atmosphere. You'll see light particles bouncing everywhere, and you'll have this kind of very subtle glow back there. So that's kind of what I was showing, but a little bit more precisely like that. And then we went into talk about the reflections and stuff, and how the lights, basically the reflections and the lights, and kind of push some of the values. Basically, with a scene like this, since it is night, it's rather difficult. So I advise the student, you know, take some very clear, clean shapes, just up the contrast. Like, there is light obviously coming from that, but, you know, in this case, it would be a matter of just pushing everything a little bit further than you think. I always recommend embellishing maybe an extra 10-20%, right? Like, just not color burn, I said color dodge, just to get the idea across here, right? So basically just pushing some of these lights. Anywhere there's like a major light, like on the dock or something, like put a specular highlight in and push the graphic shapes of the elements, and that will help overall with the readability of things. Aside from that, it was a matter of going to get a lot of rainy road and night kind of shots. Like, we were both on Google during the session. We were trying to find different ways we can add reflections kind of spot on into the scene itself to really help push the light in the scene. Like, right, you come down from the light here, we'd see like reflections over here, so on and so forth. And then we looked, while we were looking up at some dock scenes, we actually found some great light references, and I'll put those up on screen after if I can recall some of them. But they kind of had this really nice, subtle kind of tone and cone effect where they'd kind of come out, and I think we ended up going with kind of like a blue light. So we like ended up manually painting in a handful of lights, and then the light would be separate, and you could copy paste it and scale it and set it to all the lights in the scene. So we only had to paint one light correct, and then kind of add some subtle variations to it. Besides that, we of course pushed the detail on the characters up in there that were not done, and I think just kind of add a little bit of texture to the very flat look that the kind of generic 3D model gave us. So, and then, you know, sure enough, when we met the next session, we got, of course, sketches for the next scene, but, you know, Glenn was adamant on really taking this to a finish. He was super inspired, and, you know, we ultimately got, I ultimately got this, and I just think it's fabulous. I think he did a great job. I couldn't have done it any better myself. We get great rain effects. We get the lights with some awesome kind of cinematic flair to them. We got the lights in the background on the truck are absolute solid move to kind of push those, to kind of sharpen up a little bit of that. Get a little bit of rim lights kind of highlighting the truck there. Awesome subtle touches. Pushing the lights, of course, on this, and dropping the docks photo in behind that, and adding some of those greens, some of those deep yellows and oranges, all kind of in there. And there's a lot of nice subtlety to the atmosphere now that kind of wasn't there as well. And of course, activating all the lights on the ship and pushing the color on those, you know, made a huge difference. We ultimately added a lot of manual kind of specular highlights and stuff to the metal on these. That kind of really pushes these shapes out. So again, after the feedback session and looking at this, it's just such a huge improvement, and everything. Even though this looked really great, you know, at the start, we can really see now like how far, you know, it was really pushed, and how you can take a muddy kind of gray, garish looking night scene and add some life to it, and, you know, activate those subtle nighttime colors and kind of bring, you know, breathe some new life into the image. But, you know, this is great. Glenn's doing great. He's a fabulous student, and maybe I'll be showing more of his work, you know, somewhere along the lines as well. But this is just kind of a brief kind of critique and overview video I wanted to just put out this week, because I'm still working on some of the more longer form videos where I'm actually doing demonstrations. But, you know, everybody have a great weekend, and please leave a comment or, you know, like if you have any, and I'll be sure to get back to it as soon as I can. Take care.